The National Investor's motto is, you can get information anywhere, but here you get knowledge. And for well over 40 years now, Chris Temple has imparted that knowledge, an unparalleled, understandable, and useful take on the big picture of the markets and of our world. He has been out in front of what you see on the news every day on many themes. More, Chris has taken this macro knowledge and his unique analytical abilities to uncover unique investment opportunities. Often, he has guided his members to big winners in resources, biotech stocks, and more. His talents and connections often getting him into ground floor opportunities before they are discovered. Without further ado, here is Chris with today's topic.
Welcome back, folks. Today we're going to catch up with Dolly Varden Silver Corporation. They're listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol DV, as you see right here on the OTCQX listing here in the US. The symbol is DOLLF. And we're going to catch up with the CEO, Shawn Khunkhun, in just a minute for a couple of different reasons for an update here as we begin the second quarter of 2025. First, the usual preliminaries. Shawn and or myself may be making forward-looking statements, talking about the prospects of Dolly Varden, all with the best intentions. Everything may happen as and when we think, they may not. So just be aware of that. Always do your own due diligence. That's why we put that information of their website and contact information, which I'll give you again right here on the screen. Secondly, as far as contacts are concerned, if you're not already on our own mailing list here at the National Investor, make sure that you get on it. Here's our contact information. Make sure you follow me on social media. I don't have to tell you that as we're recording this, there's never a dull moment in markets. We're up and down and sideways and all over the place. A lot of things going on. Notably, as I've said in several other contexts recently, precious metals remain one of my top three commodity stories in an ever more turbulent world that we're going to be entering more so as the weeks and months go by. And Dolly Varden, to me, is and remains, and frankly, I think these days more so than when I first recommended it, a very unappreciated deep value play among explorers that has a massive project up in British Columbia in an area called the Golden Triangle, as you see right here. You'll recognize some of the other names on the list here of stories that we follow, most notably, of course, due north pretty much of Dolly Varden. We have Seabridge Gold's KSM project, another stock that you should be all over these days. But in Dolly Varden's case, this is a growing district and frankly a potentially large one. Dolly Varden's story continues to be one that is still unsung, I think, in the markets as much as or more than a lot of exploration juniors of its type. This is not a tiny little company. They've already got a very robust silver and gold resource each. It's a growing company. They're looking, frankly, to grow the Dolly Varden area into its own district. Well on their way to do that. I'll have Shawn update us on that as well. The biggest reason for doing this now is that the news just came out, and in fact, it was effective this past Monday, that yesterday as we're recording this, the 7th of April. The company had announced already that it was doing a share consolidation. So for existing shareholders, for every 4 shares you owned previously, you now have 1 at 4 times the price. That's how those things work. But importantly, doing that to meet the pricing and related requirements of listing on a New York Stock Exchange index, the Amex or ARCA, whatever you want to call it, division of the New York Stock Exchange. And that, of course, is something that companies seek to do eventually to gain access to the much larger and deeper U.S. investor markets. More so, there's still a lot of institutions and brokers out there which kind of institutionally or culturally, for lack of better terms to use, they don't care what the story is, that they don't see that something is listed on New York or on a NASDAQ. They kind of give it short shrift. So Dolly Varden wants to make sure that a subpar listing, as some would view it, is not an impediment to people taking this story seriously, as they well should. And again, Dolly Varden is a company sitting on the cusp of increased exploration discoveries. Their drilling results have been remarkable, and I'm going to have Shawn update us on that, update us on the overall quest of growing this district, etc. And here is my good friend Shawn Khunkhun, the CEO of Dolly Varden Silver. Shawn, glad you could join me today.
Chris, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, anytime. First off, I want to talk about your consolidation, which was effective yesterday on Monday the 7th. As we're recording this, you gave people one new share for each four that they had, and essentially that's to give you the price point to make the New York Stock Exchange happy, correct?
Yeah, like look, at the end of the day, I was talking to one of our biggest supporters this morning, and I was asking him about his thoughts regarding not just the Dolly consolidation, but share counts and he said to me, he goes, Shawn, at the end of the day, I have the same money at risk.
Hmm,
Whether you got a billion shares, 10 million shares, he's one of the biggest fund managers in the business, and he's got his money at risk. He's got his LP's money at risk in a number of different names. And whether there's one share out or a billion, you know. And so, look, for me, at the end of the day, the way I look at this industry is I look at it through the lens of a couple things. Number one, is the price appreciation of the shares for the shareholders. That's the thing I'm concerned about. But how do we measure that? We measure that with accretive growth in the share price. We measure that from going from the bottom left to the top right. You could look at things like market capitalization. And you could look at all these different numbers, and I'll give you some math today. And the
sure.
math today, and I'll do it in US dollar terms because the reason we're making this move is at the end of the day, the US market's the biggest market in the world. And this is a time where the US is headline news all over the world. It's headline news here in Canada. And I have a little bit of a different view on the US than a lot of my neighbors. My view is it's a privilege for me to enter the United States. It's a privilege that I've enjoyed my whole life. I grew up spending a lot of time in California. I have had a great uncle that lived in the Bay Area, and I've got fond memories of going down there once, twice a year for the first 20 years of my life. I was just down enjoying Florida with my family during our spring break. I'm heading down to a conference in Scottsdale this weekend. I spend a lot of times in the U.S. I was talking to Peter Groskopf from SCP, Sprott Capital Partners,
Okay.
on Friday, and Peter was telling me about how, when Eric Sprott retired and Peter went on as the head of Sprott, that, Sprott's assets under management had declined to about $2 billion from a peak of $4 billion in the bull market. And today, their AUM is 32 billion,
Wow.
from 2 billion to 32 billion. And Peter told me, this is the CEO of SCP, Sprott Capital Partners today, that over 100% of that growth has come from the United States of America. So what that tells me is as Canadian investors were redeeming and taking money out, US investors not only brought in $30 billion of capital, and then some. And so the lesson that I have learned, and I'm a listener, is the US market is where it is. And so we're taking Dolly to the US, and the story that we're going to tell is if you're interested in silver, and if you care about jurisdiction, if jurisdiction matters, you can buy Hecla, you can buy Coeur, or you can buy Dolly Varden.
Right.
And there's only 11 primary silver miners, companies that are in production. There are four companies that are not producing but are bigger than a $200 million valuation. We're one of those four. We're the only one that's in a very safe jurisdiction. And so that it's a very, very simple company, high grade silver in Canada. And it was a US citizen, actually a former president, who opened the Dolly Varden silver mine back in 1919, Herbert Hoover.
Yeah.
So we've had a rich history of working with Americans, famous Americans. American mining engineer opened the mine, and we've got Fidelity on the register, we've got Hecla on the register. Astute U.S. precious metals investors and corps get it, and I just want the rest of American investors to have the access and ability to also get it. And so that's why we're making the move. That's why we consolidated our shares. And I hope that answers your question, Chris.
Well, yeah, I mean, clearly, as a lot of folks already know, being on the New York Stock Exchange opens the door to more brokers, to more institutions, and so forth. Not that they're technically barred otherwise with your present and soon to be outdated OTC listing, but it's just that much more allure, I guess, that the company has. But the bottom line is the allure is in the story. And you remind us that President Hoover, once upon a time, was responsible for a lot of the early silver production at Dolly Varden and Torbrit. But you, since you've come on board, have been growing this story. I showed the map before you came on of where the Dolly Varden land package is located. You're kind of at the southern tip of that famed Golden Triangle. And what I want to update people on today, beyond the impending listing to the New York Stock Exchange, Shawn, is where we are in the progress of fleshing out a district. Because the thesis, especially after you bought Homestake Ridge from Fury, was to show that on the old, for lack of a better term, end of your land package, you've got high grade silver. You're growing those ounces still as time goes on, but now you've got silver and gold more so at the other end, and you're looking to fill in that gap in between. And I know this year already you've come out with a couple of drill results as far as step out holes that were successful. So bring us up to date as far as where you are in trying to fill in those various areas in between the old Dolly Varden complex, Homestake Ridge in between, and when we might see perhaps a resource estimate upgrade.
Sure. So look, you're absolutely right. This project is pretty rare. It's very scarce in that we've got primary high grade silver. But in the current environment we're in, with silver to gold ratio being almost 100 to 1, the economics actually today are in the silver gold rich north up at Homestake. And so we've had some really, really impressive drill intercepts, and we're going to be following up. A third of our focus is going to be up at the Homestake area. And when you talk about connecting the dots, about showing that those deposits are connected, they're one system, we're very close to doing that up at Homestake. The separation between the silver gold deposit Homestake Silver and the gold dominant deposit Homestake Main, 300 meters. It's tiny. It's a tiny distance, right? And so we're in a position right now where we've got about $32.5 million in the bank, and we're taking about 20 million of that, and we're going into Homestake. We're going in with 3 rigs, and we're going to continue to expand and extend and hope to discover more silver and gold mineralization up at Homestake. And then we're doing the same thing down at the Wolf deposit, where that's where we're going to be unveiling a new resource estimate in the future. It's an exciting deposit because it's high grade primary silver. And Chris, as you know, only 1 out of every 4 silver deposits is real silver. The other silver deposits are byproducts, right? So we've got something special, and so we're going to be putting out news in the coming weeks, detailing and outlining somewhere in the neighborhood of about a 35 to 45,000 meter drill program. that's fully funded. And we're going to be opening up camp in May, and we'll have those 3 drills turning in May. So we're about a month away from start. And so we'll be releasing the details. We'll be starting the drill program, and the catalysts are going to be if we're successful. I was talking to one of our shareholders today, and post consolidation, we're trading at $3.30 Canadian, about 240 US. He was saying to me, he's like, Shawn, do you know how you could be a $10 stock this year? And I said, no. Well, how do you think we could do that? And he goes, you connect those dots up at Wolf Torbrit. You show that there is a system in between, or it's part of the same package. And he goes, you're off. You're off to the races. It's the greatest value creation you could do for your investors, and that's why we're leveraging, 2/3 of our treasury into that program. And so, what investors have to look forward to is they have continued growth with the drill bit, exploration, discovery. But already, I'd like to remind the audience that we've got this large system, 64 million ounces of silver, 1 million ounces of gold. It's probably grown, and those numbers are probably going to grow with the next estimate. And then it's all the work that we're going to do this year with the 3 rigs and the $20 million. And then, Dolly Varden's done one other thing, which is it's done deals like the Homestake deal, where we've done regional consolidation. So that's another threat that we impose is, we're not Newmont. We're not the lead consolidator in the Golden Triangle. They're operating Bruce Jack and Red Chris. But you know what? We're hoping to do what Newmont's doing on the junior mining end of the scale. We're hoping to go in and continue to do the deals we did with Fury and with Libero, where we brought in the big bulk from Libero. We brought in Homestake from Fury. We really believe in this area. We believe it's the best geology in the world. It's the richest 20 kilometers on planet Earth for silver and gold mineralization. We believe our competitive advantage, because we're all Northerners, we're all, BC, we're in Canada, same time zone, same currency, same language. Our exploration team is from the area. We can drive there, fly there, boat there. We believe that's our competitive government. We know how to get things done in the area. And because of all that, that's what we want to offer investors. If you like silver, gold in a safe jurisdiction, trust our team who's delivered value over the last 5 years that we've taken over the management of this company. We've driven the value from 20 million to 300, and we've made discoveries. We've grown the resource base. Continue giving us the confidence to allow us to continue to do that, like Hecla has, like Eric Sprott has, like Fidelity has. And it's we're now in an environment where you've got $3,000 gold. And Chris, you probably know this stuff better than I do, but I was looking at some very, very interesting information that people like yourself and shareholders have pointed out. I was looking at a chart, 1887 to 1937. It was the South African Gold Mining Index.
Okay.
And man, like I heard that history rhymed. This chart showed me it repeated. Like
Yeah.
we're in an environment right now, and if you study, the 1930s, for example, homestake mining,
Yeah.
was the stock to own. Well,
Right.
who's the new homestake? Well, I would argue it's Agnico Eagle,
Mhm.
right? And so at some point during this cycle, that wealth, that $3,000 an ounce gold price that these companies are making $2,000 profit on every ounce they produce, and they're producing millions of ounces, and do the math, and that's why the Agnicos of the world are doing so well.
Yep.
That'll trickle down, and Agnico's putting tens of millions of dollars into other companies and other projects and buying companies and investing in projects because it pays to be a gold miner today. it pays to be a silver miner today. And so it's just a wonderful time. And what I can say to investors who are frustrated is maybe you should move on to another sector. But for those who can stomach the volatility, this is the time where I think you buy. I think you buy when there's blood in the streets. And like Rick Rule says, you'd be either be a you'd be a victim or you'd be a contrarian. And I'd rather be a contrarian.
Yeah, than a victim, of course. Well, look, that's the reason why, and you articulated it well. Gold is one of my top three commodity ideas, the other being uranium, and then the third one being natural gas specifically, though I think all of old energy right now is unrealistically underpriced, in my view. So you've got a leg up with being focused chiefly on precious metals, where base metals are still going to be, in my opinion, a little bit troubled for the near term. But I do want to talk about that because you've got a little bit of a kicker there. I know that with some of your drilling, you've got some decent numbers that have come back for lead and zinc. And then big bulk down the road, refresh our memory on what that could also bring to the table down the road.
Yeah, I care as much about lead and zinc as I do about Canadian football. No
Yeah.
offense to Canadian football, but like, no, we're here for the precious, and
Right,
as we go a little deeper, we're getting lead, zinc, but look, um, how many pounds of lead are there in a photovoltaic,
right.
cell?
None.
Zero, right? I'm
Right,
here for the silver, and when you go out and you want to protect yourself from crazy monetary policy or political instability. How much lead do you buy? Zero.
yeah,
And so for me, um, the lead and the zinc are there a little bit, and it's not a focus. The copper is interesting. We've got I've been studying the Golden Triangle since I was a kid, and there's a theme, and the theme is you get these high grade distal surface silver veins throughout the Golden Triangle, and what starts as a silver deposit in the Golden Triangle has often turned into these really big gold systems, and the examples are like Eskay Creek
yeah,
that was discovered in 1989, or the Premier deposit that was operating initially in the 1920s. Bruce Jack was initially in silver standard. So there's this rich history of these high grade distal silver veins. But what we know these deposits to be today are big gold systems, some of the biggest and best in the world, most profitable in the world. But if you go a little further north, Chris, there is a very profitable copper gold mine called Red Chris.
yeah,
And as you like the different melting temperatures of, say, silver, lead, zinc, and copper, gold, melts at a much greater temperature than do silver, lead, zinc. So my point to you is, as you get closer to the heat source, and we've got a heat source on our project called Big Bulk. It's thought to be the feeder of all the distal mineralization we're finding up at Dolly Varden, Torbrit, Wolf, these epithermal high-grade silver systems. So there's a porphyry feeder. Think of it as the source. And we're going to go this year and we're going to drill a few holes into this big bulk. And, our target's gold. That's a target. There is some silver there as well. But what we could end up reporting is we already know it's a copper, it's a fertile copper gold porphyry system.
hmm,
And at the end of the day, if we report a big byproduct, like Pierre Lassonde, who I have a lot of respect for, former chair of Franco-Nevada, what's involved in Newmont, et cetera, legend in our industry. He said if he could uh, um, define the perfect deposit, right? If he could manufacture it, it would be a copper gold project.
right,
Copper for the electrification and for the growth of the world's future, and then gold for all the things that we own gold for, hedging against inflation. It's a currency and a commodity all wrapped in one. So I think what big bulk is as Lassonde says, it's the perfect deposit. It's got both copper and gold.
Nice. And so you're going to put a few holes in that as part of what the drilling is. It'll start up in May, or is that going to come later?
So look, the way we work at Dolly Varden is we kind of run the company April 1st to
Mhm.
March 31st. So, our calendar really begins on April 1. And by about the 15th of April, we usually are at a place where the technical committee and the board of directors have approved the program.
Okay.
And so that's coming within weeks. So we're finalizing the ranking of targets. Now, what I can tell you is I feel very confident that Wolf, that Homestake will be hit, and they'll be hit hard, and that's where the bulk of the budget will go. But some of these um, priority B or secondary exploration targets, like big bulk, are still being finalized, ranked, and meters are being allocated to. But my vote is if we drill 100 holes this year, we should put 4 of them into big bulk.
Cool. That'd be a nice kicker for an already robust story. And again, I think with some of the higher grades of any company of your type and size out there, some of the drill intercepts you guys have had for both silver and gold have been remarkable.
They really have, Chris. And you know what? Like, I remember, I was coming back from Fort Lauderdale in October. I was down at a conference, and I was watching an incredible presentation by Ari Sussman from
Hmm,
Collective Mining. And Collective recently was up at $14 or $15 before this little bit of
right.
volatility we've experienced the last week. Agnico put quite a bit of money into them recently, I think $65 million. I remember coming back from that conference after watching Ari present, thinking, wow, if only I had a project like that, that's something else. And then I started looking at the numbers and I'm going, wait a minute, I kind of do.
You do. Yeah, I regrettably didn't get people into them at a low price, but I have followed that story on. I think it's probably been a couple of years since I last saw Ari, but that's a pretty cool story as well. And I would
But
say,
but
yes, you
Chris,
do have something like that.
But Chris, me personally, if I could pick between uh, British Columbia, um, I think this is I'd
Yeah,
rather
add British to the name. Right. Very, very true. Well, cool. I'm glad that we caught up. A lot of people have kind of marveled at why, and I think that there's been some pickup here and there. There have been a few companies that I've seen move somewhat, but we're still at the very beginning, I think, Shawn, of a rotation the likes of which we haven't seen in a long time. We saw glimmers of it on and off the last few years. I think most notably back in 2022 when we had bear markets in the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq, but still had some good resource stories and some other stories as well. And I think we're going to see that in spades going forward. There's a lot of unprecedented things happening in the world, a lot of volatility, and we're only at the beginning now of the old passive investing game failing to work. And it's going to force investors, really, I think, to become wiser shoppers. And it's not going to be too terribly long before they realize, hey, we've left a lot of really cheap stories and good stories off to the side here as we've watched the gold price itself go up. Silver's still a laggard in relative terms, but it'll get dragged along as well down the road. And no, I think we are going to see that corollary to when you saw Homestake as one of the leading stocks on Wall Street back during the Depression and whatnot, because I don't see anything changing the fiscal and monetary situations anywhere. They're going to become that much more fraught together with the geopolitics, and that's the reason why people want gold and silver. And a company like Dolly Varden that's sitting on a lot of high grade holes now with a growing resource as time goes on is just going to be great. So after you get all of this season's drilling wrapped up, we'll look for newer numbers later in the year, next spring.
The way it works is we're going to drill, right until the end of the year, and we won't get the final assays until the new year.
Okay,
And so we'll take that information. And so whether it's end of Q1, early Q2, kind of March, April timing, for putting some numbers around deposits like Wolf.
cool. Well, I'll be looking forward to that as a shareholder. I'm sure a lot of other people will as well. So, Shawn, keep up the good work, soldier on, and folks, when you dig into the story, and again, I'm going to repeat on the screen here all of the contact information. Be sure you keep up with Dolly Varden, visit them on social media, visit their website, get on their mailing list, and make sure you're on my mailing list as well, because from time to time we'll do updates with Shawn, repeat the news that they put out, etc. So, Shawn, I look forward to the next time our paths cross as well. It's been too long.
Thank you so much for having me on. All the
All right,
best.
take care.
Take care.
For much more of the National Investor's cutting-edge content and actionable investment opportunities, make sure to subscribe to Chris's free content at nationalinvestor.com. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel too. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.